this shift which has happened or moving away, is it also a fault of society that corrupted itself? Because the Varna system was based on guna and karma, never on birth. So the caste system comes into play. The elitism that creeps into, trying to restrict passing of knowledge within and concentrating in the hands of few just because you want to enjoy that unlimited power. Yes, it happens in other systems too. It's not that it's not there in the Islamic system where there are 72 sects, etc. It's not that it's not there as far as Christianity with the Vatican, Catholics, and everybody else. It's there. It corrupts. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. But are we to also look at that? Because one aspect of that pledge was that we got to rise above caste. We got to rise above this one and unite under as one people, as Hindus. Sandeep.
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, am I audible first of all?
Yes, you are.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. You are audible and you are also visible. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Anand. Well, actually, see, what Shri Mohan Bhagwat has said is nothing new, actually. This attempt at reconversion, or what is known as Gharvapsi or return to home, is, as old as 500 years, if not 300 years. So the first push for reconversion came roughly around, Swami Dayananda Saraswati's Arya Samaj movement.
Yes.
And such stray episodes we see in the history of the Vijayanagar Empire also, although it was not done in this kind of organized fashion. But number one, we have to look at history in order to understand this, this social phenomenon. I'm just simplifying it for the audience. Is the fact that one of the fundamental characteristics of a dharma like Sanatana Dharma is that at its very core, it has a very deeply feminine quality about it, a quality that nurtures and nourishes and upholds. So we have three concepts basically: Srishti, Sthiti and Laya, that is birth, maintenance, sustenance and dissolution. So it is common in our everyday experience that the act of maintenance or sustenance is the toughest than creating something from scratch. Maintaining it is the hardest part, be it a business, be it our own lives and our job or promotions, whatever it is. So you look at it from that perspective. So the essential element to sustain something, it needs what you call a physical protection or a safeguard. So as long as Hindu empires were there, in all this discourse, what is forgotten is that why India has still remained a Hindu majority country. It was that majority happened because of the safeguard, a military safeguard given by our kings who were extremely devout Hindus, for want of a better word. They were devout Sanatanis, they patronized temples, they built temples, they, Go Brahmana Rakshakaha. This has been our constant theme. Now when that military, royal and, political protection went away due to democracy, we are looking the history of India after 1947 is the consequence of all that. We have erected no safeguards for our dharma in our constitution. The word dharma itself is not there in the constitution. So all these movements at Gharvapsi and look, like Swami Vivekananda so brilliantly said that every Hindu going out from the fold, crossing over to any of the two Abrahamic faiths, is an enemy more. So the Abrahamic cults basically thrive on numbers.
Yeah.
It is not a question of persuasion, that gentle persuasion. They tried that with all this Sufi, whitewashing that, Sufis are the same as yogis and all that. They tried very hard to do that. But it didn't work out. On a substantial numbers, even the Sufis did not gain Hindu converts. The same story repeated with early Christian missionaries. Now that they have acquired state power, look what is happening in Andhra.
Yeah.
For example. So all these efforts at reconversion are aimed at, safeguarding. It is a question of survival, basically. So yes, whatever Mohan Bhagwat ji's pledge that he gave, is bang on target.
But taking a pledge.
What would you prefer? Yeah, that somebody evicts you from a house and you want to come back.
No, but
it's as simple as that. And
true,
you say, no, you are not,
I agree. But that coming back will
place.
happen only if there is a certain rooting of our beliefs, and if there is a systemic I won't say indoctrination, but education of who are, what our roots are and what our actual beliefs are as a nation and as a civilization, Neeraj. Because if you were to see from the 15th, 16th century India, we've shrunk. We've shrunk close to about 40%. We remain only about 40%. It's 35% of pre-independence India, which is already sliced off away from us. And if that were to be merged, then the number of Hindus will be a minority. In the India of 1930, the erstwhile India of 1930, Hindus are a minority if you were to look at it in base of population and spread across. Neeraj, that's the reality today. So we can say we are still majority in Hindus in Hindustan, but Hindustan is only about is a smaller version of what it was in the past. So it's still, you're just getting sliced and getting smaller. Neeraj.
You're absolutely right, and that is why the incident that we're discussing today, the vow that was taken by Shri Mohan Bhagwat ji and all others, makes a lot of sense. Because if we go on shrinking and we keep ourselves delusional that so we've been this great civilization and nothing is going to happen to us, then that will mean that we are living in a fool's paradise. Because as Sandeep has very nicely stated, that these totalitarian ideologies, they thrive on numbers. They are parasitic in nature. What they do is, they are on a conversion spree, and they have a declared objective which they don't hide from anybody. One of them claims that they are going to create a kingdom of God all over the world. The other category states very openly that they are trying to create Darul Islam all over the world. And if they are going to do it, that is going to happen at expense of all the other civilizations. If we look at the history of last 2000 years, what has happened is they have wiped out a very large number of civilizations that were thriving and surviving all over the world. There is no Egyptian civilization, no Roman civilization, no Inca, no Maya, no Aztec. All these civilizations have been wiped out by these two totalitarian ideologies, which are today trying to grab maximum share, maximum market share in our country also. One is doing clandestinely, the other is trying to do openly by a demographic increase. So if we are not careful, then we are going to lose this battle. And as you very rightly mentioned, that for last 400-500 years, we've been uprooted from our civilizational ethos and our socio-cultural milieu. The most effective tool that has been used to do it has been our education system, which has been thoroughly compromised, and which, I'm sorry to say, it's a very oft-repeated cliche that it is the Macaulayan system which is being perpetrated even today after about 75 years of independence. And unless and until we address these issues, we are going to shrink, and which will be a very sorry spectacle if this great civilization, which thrives on multiculturalism, which thrives on accepting everybody, which thrives on tolerance, which thrives on an open architecture, if this civilization were to lose to these totalitarian ideologies, it will be a loss not only for us, but for the entire humanity. That is what I can say.
True, but then it is not going to stop or begin, or it's not taking a pledge is not enough. The revamping of the entire system, returning to the roots as far as the education system is concerned, has to be done, and knowledge has to become commonplace. Now, simplified, and it has to be communicated at a larger, greater level. Sandeep Balakrishna, Dushyant Sridhar, and Neeraj Attri. I've run out of time here, but we hope that we've been able to give our viewers the right perspective on matters and a reason why this pledge at this point in time has huge significance. Politically, many would claim, but otherwise, societally too, it is of essence. Thank you for watching.